For our next interview, I want to bring on Anurag from Avail. We've kind of heard about a lot of things happening in the world of managing data at scale, and data availability is a term you've seen show up a lot earlier today, and you will a lot more even starting today. And also when we kind of see things like blobs and EIP 4844 and all the other things in that world. So we're going to cover what all of this means, what does it actually imply for all of you, what do you need to worry about or not worry about, and everything in between. So with that, please welcome Anurag on stage to talk about data availability. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, the mic's working. All right. So I want to talk a lot about data availability, but the thing I'm curious about is when you kind of first co-founded Polygon, did you know this is going to be a big issue that you had to kind of spin up and spin out and actually start this as a new platform? Like just talk us about sort of what made you focus on this as a problem and just kind of the timeline of what Avail, how Avail came to be.
Yeah, so when I founded Polygon back in 2017, right, like we started off actually, I don't know if people remember, but we started off building out a Plasma solution back in the day.
We remember.
And so if you look at Plasma was this off-chain execution, off-chain data availability sort of solution. Ultimately, it didn't work out. Of course, Rollups came into the picture. But it was very clear back even in that day that data availability was going to be a huge problem if you wanted to take execution offline, right? And by the time we built out Polygon POS in 2020, Ethereum had already launched this Rollup-centric roadmap. And it was becoming very clear at that time, back in 2020, that Rollup-centric future was going to be the future of blockchain execution. And so within Polygon, we took the decision to kind of, on the execution side, pivot to ZK rollups at that time. And you see some of that coming into fruition last year onwards. But we also started Avail within Polygon at that time because we knew if we had to support rollups at scale, we also had to solve data availability issues and not only the execution issues. So that was kind of the motivation behind starting Avail. Along the way, we also kind of, of course, you need scalable DA for enabling these multiple rollups. But, we also wanted to think about things like rollup fragmentation that resulted in, this.
We're going to cover all of that because it's one of those scenarios where solving one thing kind of creates a separate problem now, but we didn't realize it would be a problem until after we had solved it. So maybe let's nicely get there instead of jumping right in. What is Avail now? And let's talk about the set of products that you offer.
Yeah. So Avail, initially when we started back in 2020, so we saw this opportunity to build scalable data availability only blockchain that would offer rollups scalable DA, right? Like what that really means is we kind of break the conventional blockchain into pieces. So execution is, given to rollups, but we build this specialized data availability layer that is focused on only just that, right? And we also implement something called data availability sampling, which is this technique that gets you to verify data availability very succinctly using light lines and such. This is sort of the similar primitives that Ethereum wants to do on what is called the Dang sharding roadmap item. But we figured out that, it would take a little bit time for Ethereum to reach there because Ethereum is such a huge network securing billions of dollars of value, and it's not easy to change it, overnight, right? Like it takes a lot of time. And yesterday, we had that very successful Dencun upgrade, and I mean, it was a little, amusing to find that a lot of people just found out the implications yesterday, after seeing the low fees.
Instantly too. I mean, it's like suddenly you just saw everything was free. How that happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of us building in the space, it was, of course, pretty evident. That was one of the reasons why we started building out Avail in the first place. But yesterday, I kind of realized that, like unless the system ships into production and you see results, a lot of people don't understand that. But I think the Dencun upgrade has been this, like years of research and engineering that, like finally went to it. And so I think data availability in general is, like more and more coming into the picture, right? Like a lot of people have been talking about it. Most people don't understand it. But yesterday I thought like now a lot of people understand. So, like it's kind of vindicated our motivation of building Avail in the first place.
Nice. So I guess you talked about the data availability solution that you have, but you also have two other products. What is Avail Nexus and Avail Fusion?
Yeah, so we announced Avail Nexus and Fusion at Denver a couple of weeks ago. This is something we've been working on for the last 6 to 9 months. So most people don't know we've been working on Avail since late 2020 within Polygon. We just spun out of Polygon last year into a separate entity. But the data availability solution we have been working on almost 3.5 years. It's going to Mainnet next month. But during that journey, we understood that, of course, like we've kind of solved that problem of data availability, and we will enable rollup scalability in general through scalable DA. But what we will also contribute to the problem is that we will enable a world of 100 or thousands of rollups, right? Like, I mean, and these are not necessarily just EVM rollups. Rollup technology is also maturing day by day. We have today Cairo rollups, Wasm rollups, RIS0 rollups, Mina rollups, and so that design space is increasing, and so the number of rollups are only going to increase, right? Like, and so once you get into this world of 1,000 rollups, like what happens to the user experience? Like the fragmentation in that user experience. Even today, it's, like when you go to, when you listen to Solana people are like saying, like we have this one big chain. Like users don't really need to think about chains. But look at Ethereum, so many chains. You have to think about switching, bridging, so on and so forth, right? Like, I mean, but it's a system design thing, right? Like if you, like not all apps on the internet, for example, operate on one big supercomputer, right? Like, I mean,
everybody has their own servers, and we use different servers. Yes.
Exactly. So systems design-wise, the rollup-centric future is what we fervently believe in, and we think that there will be like these multitudes of rollups, and some of these will be like synchronous environments, like the EVM, or you put the SVM on a rollup, for example, and so on. So you can have synchronicity, but there will be a lot of independent rollups, and they might talk to each other when required, right? Like in a more asynchronous manner.
So this is saying that not all rollups need to talk to a global state. It's just they can just live on their own, and they don't need to have any knowledge of the outside world. Is that what I'm understanding?
So let me give you an analogy from, again, microservice world, right? Like when you go to Amazon and you want to purchase something, right? Like you click on the buy button, a Visa page or a payment page like appears. Now what is happening in the background? Like the Amazon microservice is sending a request when required to a Visa microservice. The Visa microservice is sending that request back. When you put in the payment, it validates the payment, then gives a success or failure back, right? Like, I mean, so the Amazon, the e-commerce app and the payment app don't have to live on one server, right? Like these can be very different servers, can scale independently, and can communicate when required, right? Like, I think in that example, the latency is so low that users don't even notice, right? Like, the stage at which we are in blockchain infra, because of the latency, it's a very pronounced problem. But I think with improvements in ZK technology over the last few years, I think the latency element will be, at par.
We've gone from a few minutes to a few seconds. I think it'll just become a few hundred milliseconds or lower. So yeah, that goes away automatically. Well, so I think you kind of brought up an interesting point. So it's not obviously all about just Ethereum rollups. You can have just different app-specific rollups that don't have to necessarily use the EVM. And we kind of saw, just from kind of your earlier comment, like 4844 went live yesterday. Instantly, we kind of started seeing effects. Transactions are much cheaper. It costs way less to do kind of store all this information on chain. isn't that like a good thing in terms of like, doesn't that mean we don't need any DA solution? Like, what does that mean for everybody else? And why should we think about a different DA solution out there? And specifically, like, what does cost savings looks like now?
No, I think this is a valid question. In general, how we think about this is, right, like, of course, we knew 4844 was coming, right? Like, I mean, but if you really look into the details, right, like, there is like 3 of 6 blobs that can be used. Like, I mean, this is the first step towards the data availability roadmap, right? Like, so of course, there is capacity. Fees will be certainly lower on Ethereum rollups after the Dencun upgrade. But once more and more rollups join in, there will be a slight increase in prices, for example. And as I said, right, like, I mean, it's not these 10 rollups or 30 rollups coming, right? Like, I mean, if you already go to L2 beat, there are like 50 rollups on that. There's an upcoming list which lists another
few hundred, yeah.
Few hundred, right? Like, and if you look at how the rollup stacks have commoditized over the last 1 year, right? Like, so initially there was going to be one Polygon ZK EVM chain. Now there's like 100 Polygon CDK chains coming. There's like 100 ZK Sync hyper chains coming, or Starkware Madara chains, or Arbitrum Orbit chains, or OP stack chains, right? Like, I mean, so these rollups are going to increase, and these are the bigger ones I'm talking about. Like, I've not even started talking about Sovereign Labs, Stacker Labs.
Just one-off ones, or now we have L3s.
Yeah, I mean, see, it's essentially like, I mean, is there a limit to the amount of microservices that the internet has? I mean, so essentially what I'm trying to arrive at is that there's going to be hundreds and thousands of rollups. All of these will require scalable DA. Ethereum, you know, like, will satisfy to a point. Of course, when dank sharding comes, that's a different question. But in general, I think all DA always will have, you know, like, a need. It will meet a demand, and it is actually meeting a demand, right? Like, look at all the Validiums that are launching, Optimiums that are launching. But I will also say that the DA space is going to be also very commoditized pretty soon, right? Like, I mean, in general, we don't see DA playing at a premium, for example, and that's why that's why we work on, or we announce Avail Nexus, which is this, you know, once we enable all these rollups at scale, right? Like, how do we deal with the rollup fragmentation issue? So really, like, if you look at the architecture that we build, right? Like, it's validity proof-based data availability sampling. We use a combination of data availability sampling plus execution proof aggregation to really tie these rollups together, right? Like, so that they do not operate in silos. They can, you know, like, asynchronously talk to each other via this proof verification, for example, right? Like, and so you can actually do this even on Ethereum. Like, proof verification of a single aggregate proof or multiple proofs can be done on Ethereum. But what we kind of introduce with Avail Nexus is sort of this L1.5 sort of a construction, where rollups talk to Nexus, proofs get verified, aggregated, and then posted to Ethereum, for example. And this is only possible because we spend time building this data availability sampling solution, which is based on validity proofs. And this kind
of. And for our audience, what is a validity proof?
Validity proof is, you know, like the correct terminology for what is called the zero knowledge proofs that are used in, let's say, ZK rollups and such. In general, what happens is you can use this technology to kind of prove, let's say, some execution or some fact without actually re-executing the logic again, for example. So you share like a succinct proof of the execution so that you don't have multiple nodes re-verifying it or re-executing it again and again.
So the thing I guess that I'm hearing is that it's not just about cheap storage, it's the fact that you have to actually simplify the experience of interacting in a world where there's hundreds of chains. And you kind of mentioned this is kind of how you get there with Nexus, the Nexus product? Okay. In terms of kind of, I guess, just what's upcoming, well, is Nexus live? Does it exist? Or is this something that you can only get to do once there are enough chains that are using Avail DA? Like, so how should we think about these timelines?
So Avail DA is, Mainnet is going to go live next month. The first version of Nexus will arrive in Q3, Q4. We already released a prototype using RIS0. Next quarter, we are releasing a prototype that showcases passing a message between a ZK Sync chain and a Polygon ZK EVM chain. That's
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, I mean, I think we'll be also releasing more details about the design in a couple of weeks. But we are very, very excited to show the first, prototype between these two chains pretty quickly.
Amazing. Well, I was going to say, like, what else can we look forward to? But it seems like it's already a pretty packed next few months. So Mainnet live next month. And then Nexus in Q3. What about Avail Fusion?
Yeah, so Avail Fusion is this new mechanism that we've been working on, which leverages, techniques like restaking and such. So essentially, we kind of act as a consumer for restaked ETH, for example, BTC from Babylon, for example. It's basically, we are a new chain. We have to bootstrap economic security pretty fast. And so, of course, we use the Avail native token for that, but we also want to utilize BTC and ETH to bootstrap our economic security initially. So that's that's Fusion in general.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about for what we can look forward to this year?
Yeah, I think yesterday I was quite happy after seeing the Dencun upgrade, in terms of the immediate decrease in fees and such. So like in general, for those people who might not be following the rollup-centric future roadmap that clearly, I mean, I'm saying this on stage, right? Like rollups are going to be the future. There's going to be these thousands of rollups, right? Like
at least,
like, I mean, and these are not all going to be these heavyweight EVM sort of chains. I'm very bullish on these app-specific rollups. And in general, I anticipate that probably a year down the line, app-specific rollup tooling will become mature to a point that app devs, when they think about deploying smart contracts today, I mean, the ease of deploying an app-specific rollup will be so easy that they, they will just, think of doing that instead, like a lightweight app-specific rollup. And I'm pretty bullish about blockchains going the microservice asynchronous way.
Awesome. Well, let's hope that future becomes more and more possible this year, and definitely if not, it'll be next year. But I want to thank you for taking the time and having this amazing chat, and can't wait to see how Mainnet goes next month. Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you, Kartik.
Thanks, Anurag.